The Old Testament gives us several records of people talking about God being holy. And these are very interesting because they explain how these people understood God to be holy. And we're going to take a look at some of those today. I'm Pastor Tim Holscher, and we are looking at a study on who is God, looking at God's character and attributes. And right now we're looking at God's holiness and what it means. And we saw yesterday with a series of illustrations just on the idea of holy and holiness, that holy simply means that which is distinct from something different. The holy or the special separated from the profane or the ordinary or the common. And I think this is going to be borne out as we begin to look at some of these passages today. We come back just to take off again from Leviticus chapter 11. In verse 44, it says, "For I am the Lord your God, and you shall sanctify yourselves and be holy, because I am holy." I am holy. So God is a God that is holy. We're going to go for the first story. We're going to start in 1 Samuel chapter 1. And in 1 Samuel chapter 1, if you're not familiar with this story, let's read the beginning of it. "Now there was a certain man from Ramathaim Zophim, from the hill country of Ephraim. His name was Elkanah, the son of Joram, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. He had two wives. The name of one was Hannah, the name of the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now this man would go up from his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts in Shiloh, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests to the Lord there. And when the day came that Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and her daughters. But to Hannah he would give a double portion, for he loved Hannah. But the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival," this would be Peninnah then, however, "would provoke her bitterly," or provoke her to provocation, is literally what the Hebrew has, to the point of just really irritating her because the Lord had closed her womb. And it happened year after year, as often as she went up to the house of the Lord, that she would provoke her, so she wept and would not eat. And if you know the rest of the story, on one of these occasions they go up there, and she goes up to the temple, and she falls on the steps before the temple, and she's praying. Now she's praying kind of the way many of us pray. She's praying in her heart, in her mind. Her lips are moving, but there's no sound coming out. And this is really says something about prayer, because normally in their culture, you came to the priest and you told the prayer to the priest, and that would relay it then to God. But she just goes and prays to God, and the priest, at this time Eli, thinks, oh, this woman is drunk because her mouth's moving, but there's no noise coming out. That was not normal, you understand. We wouldn't think anything of it if we saw somebody standing out front of our church and their mouth was moving. We'd think, oh, this person's praying. But at front of the temple, Eli did not understand that. And Eli finds out what Hannah wants, and he says, your prayer is answered. And she goes home. She has a child. She brings this child to the temple to help serve there when he becomes the proper age. And she's now going to pray a prayer. We have this beginning in verse 1 of chapter 2. Then Hannah prayed and said, my heart exults in the Lord. That is, I'm very glad, very cheered. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth speaks boldly against my enemies. Remember, enemies, rivals, had to do with this other woman, because I rejoice in your salvation. There is no one holy like the Lord. Indeed, there is no one besides you. Nor is there any rock like our God. Boast no more so very proudly. Do not let arrogance come out of your mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and with him actions are weighed. And she's going to picture this contest that had gone on between this other wife of her husband's that had tormented her, just mocked her for the fact that she couldn't have children. I mean, could you imagine being so horrible to somebody like this? And now she's saying, there's no one like our Lord, no one holy like him. In other words, he has distinguished himself. He showed himself to be different, distinct from the way people would think. So that while this woman had mocked and given hard time to Hannah, now Hannah is able to see as God's blessed her with a child, and she's brought the child now old enough to serve at the temple and to go home and have other children. that as this is all transpired, she sees God as distinguishing himself. And this is a very important concept, the way these people understood God's holiness. In 1 Samuel chapter 6, we have an incident that happens that Eli's sons foolishly take the ark into battle, which they were not supposed to do. And the battle goes against them. The ark is captured by the Philistines, and the ark kind of makes its round through the Philistines because every place it goes, it brings disaster. Because those people don't recognize God. They refuse to, they see him as a God, but their God is better. That's the way they look at it. And eventually they realize, oh man, we have messed with the wrong God. And so they send the ark back. And the ark comes back to this place called Beth Shemesh. And the people are really excited that the ark is returned. But it says in verse 19, and he, referring to God, struck some of the men of Beth Shemesh because they looked upon the ark of the Lord. He struck 70 men of them, and the people mourned because the Lord had struck the people with a great blow. 70 men being struck by God, probably struck to death, maybe struck with some of the plagues or things that had happened, but probably just simply that he caused these people to be put to, or die, caused these people to die because they looked at the ark. They treated it as something common. And verse 20, and the men of Beth Shemesh said, who is able to stand before the Lord? This holy God, to whom shall he go up away from us? In other words, they realize God is very different than they thought. And he's distinguished himself. He's really demonstrated himself to be holy in this way. Because they realized they didn't take him seriously as they should have. And because of that, they suffered. Last one I want to look at today is over in Isaiah chapter 5. In Isaiah 5, if you go back to the beginning of this, he's going to picture his relationship to Israel as a farmer that has planted a vineyard. And he says, and my well-beloved had a vineyard on a fertile hill, and he dug it around, removed its stones, planted with the choicest vine. He built a tower in the middle of it. He hewed out a wine vat in it, and he expected it to produce good grapes, but it produced only worthless ones. And he's using this as an illustration for his people, Israel, and the way they responded to him, and the way they never did what he really desired. And so as a result, when we get down then to these people, and he really chides these people for the fact that they're joining land to land. They're not giving any room for anybody else. The powerful are taking over and they're controlling, and they're just building house to house. And he says, as a result, you've got these people that are strong and powerful, and they're just running roughshod over everybody, and they're not caring the way they should. In verse 14, therefore Sheol has enlarged its throat, opened its mouth without measure, and Jerusalem's splendor, her multitude, her din of revelry, and the jubilant within her descend into Sheol. That is the place of the dead, by the way. Verse 15, so the common man will be humbled, and the man of importance, he will be abased. The eyes of the proud also will be abased. So everybody has kind of gotten messed up with all of this stuff. I think we can see that. It's that you've got maybe, shall we say, the rich people. They're kind of taking over and running everything and doing it wrong. But even the common people, the regular person, they aspire to this. And so they're pushing to try to get what these other people have. And it says, and the Lord of hosts will be exalted in judgment. The holy God will show himself holy or distinct in righteousness. That is, he's not going to favor one direction or another. He's going to just judge righteously according to the rules that he had given these people, Israel. The holy God will show himself holy or distinct in righteousness. It's not separated from evil. It's not separated from sin. He's going to show himself to be a God that is distinct, a God that is different. Different than what? Different than the way they normally would have seen righteousness meted out, judgment carried out. So when we're thinking about God, these three quick stories here today are reminding us that God is a God that is very different than most people think of God. He is distinct. When we're thinking of his holiness, we're thinking of a God that really has distinguished himself as being very, very unique, very set apart from anything that is common. And we're going to have to come back and flesh that out a little bit for what that means on an eternal level. and it will have some bearing on this. But even in these ways, I trust that your relationship with God and what you've seen him, that you can see that God has distinguished himself as holy in your life and what he has done and how he has acted. And I'll give you some things to worship out. When you're worshiping God, that you are a God that is not normal. You're a God that is separated from anything different. And we're thankful for that. And with that, I encourage you to have a good day in the Lord. And thank you for joining me.